An intent nightmare arm. The arm at the end of the initial security breach teaser drove the internet mad for like a week before we ultimately just said we'll wait for the next trailer. And with the most recent, which was the last trailer before the game's release, we still had nothing about that arm. And I guess I can understand why, but it was still frustrating. So you can guess that when someone tagged me on Twitter at Centimeter Monroe and showed me a picture comparing the security breach arm to the arm of Nightmare Freddy, I'd be intrigued. So intrigued, in fact, that I actually got angry because if it's ever intended on being a Nightmare Freddy arm, I'm leaving, okay? These animatronics are perfectly content being illusions, okay? Or in a child's imagination running wild while his body is trying to save his life. But still, what the hell? How do these versions of Afton in an animatronic keep changing? They all have his body in it, so they must be intentionally the same endo, but then it keeps changing designs still. And a 9-Stitch Wraith. Seeing the Stitch Wraith was very unlikely, but I would have certainly enjoyed an appearance of the character, even if it was in a nightmare sequence like I had suggested in other videos, or maybe it was a brief passerby. I mean, it's not impossible, but I do think that that one wasn't likely to happen. Even in a future DLC, I don't think it would happen. But it would certainly be interesting to be looking out a window or something in the Pizzaplex, although there's not really any windows, but it would still be interesting to see him out of the corner of our eye. However, we did used to believe that the Afton arm was in fact the Stitch Wraith, and some fans believe that Burntrap will actually turn into the game universe's version of the Stitch Wraith, which wouldn't rely on Phineas tag art and would probably work better for the story of the games, but I don't know. Based on everything we've seen, I don't think that William will be losing his face anytime soon. But what do you think? Do you think that William, or I guess Burntrap, will end up being the Stitch Wraith of the FNAF game universe, or do you think that we'll never see the Stitch Wraith in the games? Be sure to let me know down below. And it ain't not Afton. Some thoroughly believe that this animatronic, this new version of the Spring Bonnie animatronic, to not be William, and instead possibly be Henry Emily, William's business partner and father of his first victim. Why do they think this? No idea. However, I can kind of see why, but simply it's just due to inconsistencies, since seemingly the endo for this version of Springtrap also has the same endo as the Glamrock animatronics, or the ones that we see in what is honestly the scariest part of the game. Those are the only real endos that we see. Since if this was Afton, the endo should be the first version of the endoskeleton. My explanation for this is simply because they had this model for the endo in the files and they were rushing to release something after already delaying the game multiple times, so they used it and added the Springtrap bits onto it. And since he's so destroyed, it's really difficult to determine whether it's the same design as Scraptrap, and since Henry was also in the FNAF 6 location, it could be him technically, or at least he was around the location, but I still doubt it. And it's 7 Bonnie. This is an interesting theory from Reddit user u/was that the bite of 87 on the Game Theorist subreddit a month ago, which actually matpat just talked about in his last Game Theory on Sunday. The post didn't get much love, but it's certainly interesting. Was that the bite of _87 asks if the Burntrap animatronic is using the disassembled Bonnie. Quote from the Reddit post. So, I have a theory that Burntrap is using the disassembled Bonnie robot. Let me explain. So you know how Burntrap has an intact animatronic foot even though no other Springtrap or Scraptrap never had them? Management might have disassembled Bonnie, and there could have been a body of Glitchtrap infected person in there, which explains the dead rotting corpse, and Afton could have taken over, but is weak, which explains why he needs a recharge station. That is all I have for now. It's kind of rough, but considering how Afton's body is still in that robot, which wouldn't be necessary if his consciousness is only in Glitchtrap or if it was transferred into this endo, I don't think that this is actually the canon. I think that if Afton's body wasn't in the robot, you'd be onto something, and matpat would also be onto something because he also agrees that this should be Glamrock Bonnie's endo. But his body being in there it has to be Scraptrap, but heavily burnt. Sure, he has another arm, but they could have just added an arm onto him. But the main body of it would have to be Scraptrap, unless we have a really messed up scenario going on, which is possible, but it's a kid's game, so I don't know. I mean, would Vanny take Afton's rotting corpse and put it in a new endo? I don't think so. I personally don't think so. I think that they just replaced the arms and the legs so that he could stand, because he didn't have his actual human feet anymore. That's just what I think. And at 6, AI. It is unknown how Glitchtrap was able to leave his body for the events of FNAF VR, or how he re-enters it for the events of Security Breach. Based on everything we know about this series, it should be impossible for Glitchtrap to exist if Afton is still inside Burntrap, especially if the one you should not have killed is keeping him alive still, since that would prevent Afton from escaping from his body. And despite a line of dialogue in the trailer clearly coming from some sort of William Afton, Burntrap never speaks throughout his entire encounter, which only makes this more confusing, since if he talked, we would know that he isn't an AI, but he doesn't talk, so we can't be sure if he is or not, since not talking doesn't exactly mean that he's an AI, since people can also choose not to talk. And the AIs in this game also talk, so at this point, we have no idea if he is or isn't an AI, which is really annoying. Although, I still believe that the one you should not have killed is Gregory, not Cassidy, but you know, well, matpat doesn't want to talk about it. He won't respond to my Twitter, okay? Or my Instagram. Or literally anything at this point. matpat, please. Let's talk about this. Halfway through into number 5, Ultimate Custom Night. I think we all know where William Afton he deserves to go, okay? One-way trip downstairs, or as Henry said, although for one of you, the darkest pit in hell has opened to swallow you whole, so don't keep the devil waiting, old friend. I'm still waiting, Afton. And you know what? We thought we had gotten rid of him. We thought that William was in hell for Ultimate Custom Night, however, this proves to not be the case when the Man Room 1280 was released, showing us that instead William had only been in a coma like his son years before. However, this time winning was him waking up instead of dying, only dying when he explodes in the Fazbear warehouse and creates Glitchtrap, but apparently this is no longer what happened. Because did William really possess a hard drive and become sentient code, or is there something more going on here? While yes, weird things in the series can be explained away with, oh, it's FNAF, or like a dream theory of something, but like, no, I'm not doing that, okay? That's the coward's way out, and I'm not a coward for the most part. Although I don't want to play horror games. But like, just look. If Afton is in Burntrap, he shouldn't be able to be Glitchtrap. The Ultimate Custom Night is just Burntrap being in the pod. It's what he's seeing when he's in the pod. So everything we thought we knew about Ultimate Custom Night doesn't count anymore. And that's hella annoying because, you know what? We thought we had something. We thought that we had finally figured out one thing about this series. Then you know what Scott says? Up yours. And at 4, survivors. It seems like everyone we see in the true ending to Security Breach, including Burntrap, are survivors of the FNAF 6 fire, which means that this would indeed be Scraptrap or Springtrap, but as to how he changed again, I have no idea. How do we know that this is everyone from FNAF 6 and not just William? Well, the Blob, which is a massive sized proportion of wire tentacles, because of course it is, and animatronic parts with possession of many glowing eyes. It has a whole load of them, okay? It has a mask that is identical to that of Funtime Freddy with black eyes, pinkish red glowing pupils, and like the endo face that reveals to have face plates rather than tubes, which is already a whole other can of worms that I don't want to touch with a 10-foot pole. The Blob's body is a large mass of wire like tentacles, and like it's basically what the sister location endos were made out of. However, it also appears to be a larger version of Molten Freddy from the Pizza Simulator Fire. Okay, but it's far bigger, and it has parts of other animatronics like Circus Baby, the Puppet, Chica for some reason, Mangle, Bonnie, and several Endo Mark IIs. And you know what? There's probably others, which again is a whole other can of worms that I don't want to touch. Getting close to the end, in number 3, wanted, dead or alive. Forget it. Because, yeah, you know what? This is actually a good question in this case, since I don't know if Afton is alive or dead inside of the Burntrap suit, okay? He was alive in the Springtrap and Scraptrap suits, as we learned from the Man in Room 1280, because he was possessed by the one you should not have killed. But did he finally get put down after FNAF 6, or is he still kicking? Okay, his body is still present within the Burntrap suit, or at least it partially is. His skull is still there. So, what's the consensus here? I don't know. The existence of Glitchtrap seems to imply that he's dead in the suit, but Ultimate Custom Night suggests that the one you should not have killed is still possessing him, which would be what he sees in the recharge station, which would mean that he's alive, and not because of the recharge station, but because the one you should not have killed would still be possessing him, which they would only do if he was still alive, since if we're being honest, the only reason that Afton was possessed was so that he could suffer, so being possessed after he's dead isn't really gonna do anything for Crying Child, because that Crying Child is definitely the one you should not have killed, not Cassidy. I'm saying it, okay? It's a thing. And the one you should not have killed would not be controlling Burntrap to take over Freddy and turn things evil. It just goes against what we know about the character. So I don't know at this point. I feel like he's probably still alive, but like just barely. Although that means that Glitchtrap shouldn't exist. Penultimately, in at number 2, finally dead. The true ending is seemingly one of the scariest parts of the game because it contains a load of things, okay? After making your way into Burntrap's area, Freddy will be taken over by Afton's newest form, and it's up to Gregory to defeat him by pressing 3 buttons outside of 3 monitors to burn Burntrap. Players will also need to avoid the animatronic enemies that come for Gregory and then use the doors to temporarily lock them out, and then other things. When Burntrap is finally burned, the Blob, which was that tentacle monster thing that I was talking about, attacks him to make sure that he doesn't get away. Freddy and Gregory will then be shown escaping and sitting on a hill together. However, if the Blob actually does kill William is a totally different question. There are death animations in the game files, however they aren't used in the ending, so we can't count it as canon. Plus, the whole I always come back thing should have ended with this game from what we understood about the series, but he came back nonetheless, so even logical conclusions aren't going to help us. And if the Blob was going to ensure William's death, it would then have to ensure its own death, so I doubt that it did it. God, just please let William finally be dead for the love of everything in life. Please. And finally, in at number 1, comes back. I think that unfortunately Afton being resurrected or returning in some form or another is inevitable. I don't get why, okay? I think at this point we can move on from this killer. We have a new one, but a load of people seem to think that we need Afton back again. I put a poll up on like the Vanny facts lists that we know during the premiere. And even though the video is about Vanny, only 51% of people thought that she was better than Glitchtrap. And I think that speaks volumes as to who the favorite in this series is. Like, I get that we've grown up with Afton as the killer, okay, but hell, we didn't even know his name until Sister Location. Until that point, we were calling him after a frickin' color, okay? We've known this man's name for like 5 games. That's literally half the series. That's half the time the series has been out. The first 4 games didn't have him, okay? He was just like, he wasn't even a character in the first game. Just a mysterious man that matpat compared to Nathan Dunlap, okay? Just end him. Finally, please. The main issue I've been having is whether William is dead or alive. And there are a couple different things to consider here. Firstly, he is seemingly in a new endoskeleton, which would indicate that he's dead and Glitchtrap's consciousness is just being transferred into Burntrap's spot via the recharge station. But his head is clearly visible. Like, you can see his skull and his actual human jaw, meaning that he could still be holding on to this world via that head, especially given who we're talking about here. The most stubborn to ever grace our screens. This also can't be a new endo, and just the model that they're using for the others since it was easier and they could release the game faster. This seems to be indicated by the way that Burntrap walks. If this was a new endoskeleton, why would he be shambling like a zombie? But the claws and repaired sections to the actual endo also seem to indicate that this is also a new endo and possibly even Glamrock Bonnies. So there's a whole lot of wrong going on here. All the points are intersecting and it's not fun. Originally, I was against the whole Glamrock body endoskeleton thing because, well, frankly, the body in the suit kind of disproved it for me, but I think I might have found a way to make it work. However, looking at the model, I'm still not 100% sure. If this was the Glamrock body endo, it would need to have broader shoulders and actually be shorter. Like, even scaling the Glamrock endo so that they're the same height, the endos, when posed the same and lined up, just they don't match. There are similarities, of course, between the 2 designs, but there aren't enough similarities where I can call this even really above 50%. There's also the issue of the muscles being woven throughout the body, or maybe those are nerve fibers. If it was just the head, I'd understand, since they could have just pulled the old endo head and put it onto the new body. Since all the parts were intertwined, Afton's head would have come with it. But with the muscles throughout the rest of the endo, that's way too intricate to actually have been placed there. And they would only be there and not dangling if it had been stuck there after being shoved full of machine parts. I don't think that they're taking super glue to glue these fibers back onto a new endoskeleton. If Afton was going to transfer his head to a new endo, it wouldn't come with the rest of his body bits. It wouldn't. That's not how it works. Which would mean this would have to be Springtrap's endoskeleton, which also explains why it's so run down, why he shambles, and why he hardly has any casing. And Springtrap's design also seems to change from game to game. From FNAF 3 to FNAF 6 he was totally different, so him changing again in Security Breach seems like no big deal in comparison. It's basically normal for him to get a newer and seemingly scarier attempt at his design with a new game. And at least this has an understandable progression from the last game and even from FNAF 3, since it's more run down and not just a bigger head like Scraptrap. It's like he sold his soul for a bigger head and then the demon kind of made a joke out of it. The most reasonable assumption that I have for what happened though was that he was given the hands of Glamrock Bonnie since it has the claws, and just he wasn't given the entire endoskeleton. But then again, his arms have the bits of muscle and nerve fibers as well, which means that it would have to have been his old one, it would have to have been there from the start, it would have to be the arm of the old endoskeleton, which is a whole other conundrum because Scraptrap was missing an arm and Springtrap didn't have any casing on his foot, yet here we are. I just think that we have to kind of leave this one up to artistic license and accept that it's meant to be the same endoskeleton, just with a replacement part or two from Glamrock Bonnie instead of like the entire endoskeleton. It makes sense, honestly, and it's really the only reasonable explanation that we have. Unless the colors are wrong on the images that I was looking at and the bits on the hands are just meant to be melted casing, which is possible, but I doubt it. As for if he's wanted dead or alive, I think this version of Afton is actually finally dead. And honestly, I'm happy about that because it means that even if he's still here, we can kill him off for good. This is the most logical conclusion to me because, well, other than him basically being only a head, this guy has had multiple backslides of, oh, I'm dead, just kidding. And this time around, while we instantly predicted that he had indeed survived, I think that Scott is finally flipping the narrative on us. We predicted it, so it's not gonna happen. Afton is no longer connected to his body, as we can clearly see from the formation of Glitchtrap. And Glitchtrap being created would only be possible if Afton died, since the one you should not have killed was dead set on keeping him breathing. But Burntrap, this guy doesn't even have lungs anymore. So yeah, this version of Afton's body is dead, but his consciousness lives on. Like how there's like the conspiracy that Walt Disney froze his head. Yeah, well, that's kind of what they did with Glitchtrap. And then that programming was probably uploaded into his old host, or I guess vessel, since I've been rewatching Supernatural. Basically, this guy would be impossible if he wasn't just Afton's code loaded onto an endoskeleton. Plus, the eyes are clearly robotic this time around with purple pupils, rather than the previous iterations that had seemingly real eyes, Afton's actual eyes, since it was in suit mode after he got snapped. And opening his head in those like secret FNAF 3 screens revealed that it was actually like his eyes because they were seemingly in the same place. So, all in all, here's the story of Burntrap as far as I can tell. During the FNAF 6 fire, Afton passes out. Not dead, but still somehow alive thanks to the one you should not have killed, Crying Child. This leads to the events of Ultimate Custom Night that sees Afton stuck in his own mind trying to escape so that his spirit can move on. But Crying Child, represented by a golden bear like the one who crushed his skull, tries to keep him stuck, until eventually he throws everything that he has at him. 50-20 mode. After being so weakened by the fire, William survives this attack on his mind, and Crying Child's spirit is set free, hence the spasming bear at the end of that mode. That's him burning as the fire sets his soul free. William's soul then latches onto the nearest thing that it can find, one of the hard drives in the storage room that the Scraptrap animatronic was being kept in. One that gets scanned to create the Freddy Fazbear virtual experience as the company tries to rebuild its reputation. Then, not wanting to waste the land that was bought for their company, Fazbear Entertainment begins building a new pizzaplex on top of their old location. Whether this is due to Glitchtrap possessing someone higher up at the company through the game or someone just wanting to save money is up in the air, but the remains of the FNAF 6 simulated pizzeria are buried under the pizzaplex's foundation. That's when Vanessa comes along, our player character from Help Wanted, who reassembles the 16 cassette tapes in an effort to destroy Afton once and for all, but ultimately fails. When our mind is distracted by following Tape Girl's instructions, William locks us in our mind and in the Princess Quest minigame that would later get ported to an arcade cabinet for insurance purposes. And by insurance I mean like insurance on Vanessa so that she wouldn't easily be able to escape. As Vanny, William then uses the animatronics to dig out his body and put his old endoskeleton in a recharge station so that when he's able to transfer himself back into it, he'll be able to move. After all, at this point, he's not a spirit, but simply coding, which means that in another game, if he is still alive, we'll actually be able to kill him off. He also gives his old suit some upgrades in the form of Glamrock Bonnie's hands and right foot. Why would he not go with a new, more powerful endo, you ask? Because it's William and his Spring Bonnie suit. It's his body in there. Of course he'd want it back. He's been that way for like at least 40 years at this point. It's all he knows. Then as Gregory and Freddy jump down into the pit, William can sense it. Either because he's an animatronic, because one or both of them are meant to be his kids, or something else, he activates his body even though it's not fully charged and tries to take over Freddy. He's not fully charged, hence the shambling, which Gregory ends up preventing with fire, which has surely traumatized Afton by now, and considering how he's only code, this time fire would actually finish the job. Eventually, the place actually catches on fire and Freddy and Gregory escape, but the Blob grabs hold of William. Whether it was to save him or seal his fate is unknown, but this almost certainly isn't the end of William Afton's story.